What's up everyone, John from ARTV. It's a special time of the year when I actually have some time to catch up on redemption reviews. Redemption reviews are, yes, throwbacks, but also callbacks to horribly embarrassing videos that I made and put onto the internet for some reason. And today we're going back and taking a look 5 years later at Fun's 2012 album, Some Nights. Oh, we're talking about Fun. I guess I need my indie hipster glasses. Whoa, how did those get there? Wow, I don't know if this is gonna work actually, but look at this glare, it's awful. Despite these lenses not being real, my love for this album is, and it's one of those albums that I've loved from the start, honestly, and I think it gets a bad rep in the indie community just because it featured auto-tune on it, and obviously they had a lot of mainstream attention due to the success of We Are Young, Some Nights, Carry On, many hit singles on this record, and they promoted the hell out of it, and then they just stopped and obviously went their own ways. Nate put out his own album. Jack Antonoff is now a mega producer. And from what I understand, Andrew Dust is actually doing some production and film scoring. So good for him. Good on them. I hope that they converge as Fun once again someday. But I have to take a look at this album again because my initial review was filmed on top of my damn fridge. I was at this point in my YouTube career where I was just like, oh, let's put the camera somewhere because the audience does not want consistency in your backdrop. No, they wouldn't want that. Just film it wherever. That's cool. Oh, the refrigerator is buzzing the whole time? Even better. Despite my opinion of my older self not aging well, I actually have a fond opinion of this album. Perhaps even more fond all these years later as I listen through this album. There's so much to this album, and there's a lot of heart, there's a lot of warmth, and there's also a lot of sadness packed into these tracks as well. Despite some of them being upbeat, I think that that's often kind of offset by the fact that there are some more negative lyrics that can pull you down and make you think about the connotation and meaning. This is a 10-track album, technically 11 because every edition I've ever seen actually has the bonus track Out on the Town. I've actually never seen an edition that doesn't have it, so while there's technically 10 songs, I'll talk about Out on the Town as well because it's a great song. I thoroughly enjoyed this project from start to finish. There's a few minute details that I don't care for as much, a few places where maybe the auto-tune isn't used as effectively. I'm looking at you, stars. For the most part, it is very tasteful, well done, and I think it really helps sell these songs at the core of it all. I think that I like it because Nate Ruess is a good vocalist, and this auto-tune is only used to enhance and kind of change things up. Now, I want a show of hands in the comments section down below if this is how you discovered the band as well. I actually was playing the game Tap Revenge on my original iPhone 4, 3, I don't know what it was. I don't know if there was an iPhone 3, but at least the iPhone 4. I was playing Tap Revenge, and their track Walking the Dog popped up off of Aim and Ignite, and it was a free track that week. I downloaded it, and I just loved it. I couldn't get enough of it. And then they also had another one that also appeared for free, I believe. And that track is still one of my favorites to this day, but it wasn't by Fun. I thought it was initially, but it was actually by Nate's former band, The Format. And I fell in love with his voice. The name of that track was She Doesn't Get It, and still to this day, I jam that. In fact, I featured it recently on an episode of my Series 7 on Sunday. Once they announced their signing to Fueled by Ramen, a label that I actually really admired and liked at the time, I got very excited, especially after they dropped We Are Young, which I heard, fell in love with those striking, gorgeous, huge pianos, that sexy hook, and still, every time that rolls around, I think it's one of the best hit songs of this decade, perhaps of this century. That and the title track Some Nights. And Some Nights, definitely my favorite song still to this day. Those vocal layers remind me of Queen, and it's such a grandiose, epic song that can build you up and also make you think and not take things for granted in life. It's just like maybe you're feeling a bit overly privileged, and then you start to reflect on something like this. And the entire album really gives me that feeling of just going out. It makes sense, and I think that that's what the concept that they had in mind was. Out on the Town obviously being the closing bonus track here. That one has a great pacing to it that kind of sums things up. Not that Stars doesn't, it's just that I feel the auto-tune is a bit distracting from the message of the track, and while I do like parts of the instrumental, it's kind of glitchy, a little bit spacey. It's okay, but once we get to out on the town, that really starts to push things. And Nate is singing of stopping at somebody's house and being outside of the window, not wanting to intrude, but at the same time he's out, so why not stop in? Some Nights has such a grand mixture. You're gonna find everything from swelling pianos to soaring vocals to the auto-tune that I've already mentioned several times, to the beats, to the electronics, and stirring it all together in a pot. It probably shouldn't come out as good as it does, but in my opinion, it definitely does. You've got songs like All Alright, which are definitely kind of dragging you down into a pit of despair, and he's talking about, I've got nothing left inside of my chest, but it's all alright, when obviously it's not. And I love how gloomy this one is. The instrumental is great. I love the peppy, kind of almost theatric drums on that one. And then right after that, we've got something like All Alone. I'm sorry, right before that. They are actually back to back on this album, and two of the brightest spots here. All Alone is one of those moments that is more upbeat, a little bit more thrilling in terms of its instrumental. It's really, really catchy and hooky, and obviously it has a bit of a disparaging message once again, but I think the catchiness kind of outweighs that. I love the whole happy song except sad message, and it's actually a sad song, and the way that it's presented here, it's honestly pretty ace. Why Am I the One got the music video treatment and single release as well, and I do like the vocal melodies and harmonies on this track. Whenever they team up like they do on this track, the title track Some Nights, it's just epic, and you can see how fitting their voices are together, and you can see the production work. It was very, very meticulous on an album like this, because it's hard to make a lot of these ideas line up, and if it wasn't executed perfectly, a lot of them could sound a bit more like Stars, which was one of the only misfires on this record. Instead, we get great songs that avoid the cheesiness that they could totally fall into, like Carry On, which was another big hit for them, and I'm so glad that it was. And it tells another tale of roaming the streets and how things are going to improve. And obviously we have a track, It Gets Better, another catchy, upbeat, kind of fun one that has this buzzing sensation about it. And I love a moment like that because it's bubbling at the brim, but it never boils over to the point where you're like, okay, that's too much, let's chill. Technically, the last two songs on the standard edition of this album, One Foot and Stars, are a little bit rough. Obviously, we've got that closing moment to really send us out on the right note, but One Foot is a little bit too beat-driven in my opinion. It's a little bit too produced and too carefully decided in advance. It just doesn't feel like it has the fervence of many of these other tunes. And as I listen through this album, I get like through 8 tracks. I get through 8 great tracks that I love, all the way from that opening intro that just reminds me of being at a gala or a very wrench event or something like that. And Nate's vocals almost come across eerie on something like that as it leads into Some Nights. But then it's like we get to track 9 and it's kind of just like a little speed bump. It's not like straight downhill or anything like that. It's just a little speed bump that makes it a bit inconvenient, and it makes me want to skip over those moments. I thoroughly enjoyed watching the rise of this band in late 2011, early 2012, as the song broke the record, We Are Young, for selling over 300,000 downloads 6 weeks in a row on iTunes. I think that's the first song to do it, perhaps the only song to ever do it. That and Somebody That I Used to Know by Gautier were blowing the hell up, and I was so happy for the alternative scene and movement to see them getting #1 songs on the Billboard Hot 100. Some Nights started at 3, and I was just so excited to see them in Super Bowl commercials, just all over the place, because Fun were one of those bands that I wanted other people to know about, and they did have a commercial-leaning sound, but had plenty of traces of that indie stardom that actually got them there in the first place. So to say that I'm pleased with this record still 5 years later is an understatement. I love their first album, I love their second album. They're vastly different from each other in a lot of ways, but at their core, it's still fun. And I do hope that we see them again in the future. Who knows? Jack's very busy. They're all very busy. We will see. For me personally, Some Nights still holds up big time. I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. I'd be curious to know your thoughts 5 years later in the comments section down below. More Redemption reviews are on the way. Make sure you tap right over here if you want to see another one of those, or if you'd like to see another recent video I did on the channel, you can tap right over here. If you're able to support me on Patreon, top link down below, pick yourself up some merch and support the channel. That is linked to the second link, and other than that, I'll see you very soon on ARTV.